Hi, this is Melana. Welcome to my new session on the nature of suffering. I would like to speak about this because in my last session video, I spoke about my experience with gang stalking, psychic attacks, and spell work, and what I had experienced. There are two things that stand out the most about the experience. One is the suffering, the pain and suffering, and the other is the wisdom and the strength. And those two elements are my markers for describing the overall impact of what I experienced. And to each of those, I had different reactions. And what is profound to me about what I discovered at the end was the merging of the two into one whole experience that I could understand, I could track, I could see beyond the pain and suffering to the strength and wisdom. It's like connecting the dots or bringing two very separate elements together to make one whole experience. What's also interesting is the energetic realities or the energetic forces behind the two. The pain and suffering came through loud and clear as fear. It had all the elements, all of the expressions, all of the feelings, all of the emotions of the deep and profound fear. On the other hand, the wisdom and the strength had all the hallmarks of love, all of the hope, all of the constancy, all of the growth factor that's inherent in the experience of love as an energy. So they both presented as what they were in their pure form. And it was up to me, with these two separate things happening, to walk myself through this until I could merge the two. And then the experience became whole. And in that wholeness of the experience, I was able to come back to the wholeness of myself. So I learned a lot. I cannot tell you how much I learned walking through this. I have yet to know how much it is because I am just starting to go through the outcome of what happened. One of the things about suffering, the nature of suffering, is the coming to terms with human suffering. This is where this all began for me. If I were to go back and look at not so much the suffering I have experienced in my life, because it's been long and deep, but when I started to understand that suffering was a thing and I had feelings about it, when I was experiencing it all along the way, in and out of the years of my life, I was so enmeshed in it, whatever the circumstance was, whatever the event was that produced the suffering. That was the totality of what I knew about it. Basically, it hurt. It just plain hurt, but it was a kind of hurt. Suffering is a kind of hurt that is relentless, that continues way beyond our capacity to handle it. It takes us over the edge, an edge of pain and grief that we did not know before that moment, before that particular event happened, where pain and grief went into suffering because it took us over the edge of what we had known pain and grief to be thus far. Suffering is when you've reached your limit of what you've ever known. about pain and grief, and it takes you over a new edge into a deep pit of pain and suffering you did not even know could happen to you. It is one thing to review old pain and suffering modalities, let's say, where okay, if I have a stomach ache, I know the parameters of a stomach ache. I don't like it. It's discomfort. Discomfort is what it is when we revisit old pain and grief dynamics that we've already gone through. It is suffering when we are taking beyond any one of those in terms of our experience, when it's a new pain or a new grief that we had yet to know of. So I remember I never paid any attention to the overview, the big picture look at pain and grief, hurt, pain, grief, I just showed up for when it happened. It wasn't until I was well into doing the work that I do, and I had experienced enough of my own journey. So what happens to you once you start the whole process of learning to love yourself is the opportunity, and if you stay in it long enough, it is just what happens to you. You become an investigator. You have this mode that you go into. It's when you get your abilities to go into the bigger picture version of things, when you can move beyond the experience and move beyond the emotional reaction and move into a bigger picture where you can get out. So you can get out of the trees and see the whole forest of the event and go, oh, okay. And this is something you learn by virtue of just undergoing your process, learning how the whole reality of processing works. It's inbuilt. This ability, this bigger picture view is inbuilt in this process that love has given us to make this, these transitions from fear to love. So inbuilt in that, and once you've spent enough time literally just moving your stuff from fear to love, you stumble upon this ability that you can take yourself out of the emotional reactive experience of any event and look at it from the bigger picture. One of the ways that we describe this in the work is this way. Imagine that you're in a football field. You're on a football field or in a football arena. And as we know, there is the field, and then circling the field are all the seats where the spectators, the fans, come to view the football game. So imagine that this is an empty field and all the seats are empty. And imagine that this football field is your life reality. So on that football field is where your whole life story takes place. From the beginning until where you are, until the future, all of who and what you are, what makes up you and your life reality, it's all on the football field. And all of the seats that surround that arena, your life, all belong to you. They're all yours. And what is asked of you is this. Somewhere you're sitting in some seat every moment of your life by virtue of the fact that you have a perception or a perspective about your life or yourself. You are automatically in one of those seats. One of the great things about having all of those seats available to you is that if the seat you find yourself sitting in, now let's track it like this. Something happened and it was not fun. Something happened in your life and you thought, oh no, and it's a certain amount of despair. So let's add that to despair and hurt, pain, grief, that whole suffering concoction. You're in some mode of that, and you're having a hard time dealing with it, accepting it. It's not where you want to be or desire to be, and it feels really bad, and you cannot see any way through it or beyond it, and you really don't just want to sit in it. When working with people and I find them in that state, this is what I say to them. All right, imagine yourself, in a football field, and all the seats in the arena belong to you. And that now how you're feeling about what you're going through and your ability to perceive or see anything else beyond what you can see is one seat in that arena. Now imagine that if you would like to shift how this is going down for you, how you're experiencing what you feel about it, all you have to do is get up and choose any other seat. You could literally choose the seat next to you. On either side of you, you can go down one or up one, or go all the way around to the other side of the arena. Any seat change that you make will change your perception. Subtly, drastically, whatever, but it will change. If you imagine, okay, I can't keep looking at this. This is giving me nothing. I can't change from what I see and thus what I'm experiencing in this seat. So let me get up and change my seat. So I recommend that to people. Change your seat in the arena and then take another look and tell me what you see. Allow me to sidebar here so that it doesn't appear that I am describing some kind of magic or parlor trick. I am very aware that when we are in the depth of our suffering, it is not easy to either expect ourselves to be able to, or for us to make that leap into the bigger picture. Usually, we are pretty much sequestered in the grief that we find ourselves in. So when I say, take a different seat and voila, tell me what you see, as if I'm expecting the person to say, oh, wow, now I see it clearly, or, that's not realistic. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. When you are, let's say, in the midst of your experience of the situation or event, there is a sequence of events that will occur. If something is happening to you, you will and ought to, in the sense of the truth of what is happening, be allowed or allow yourself to experience it, to know what it is that you are feeling, to understand the nature of your own feelings or just have them. It isn't that thing where you want to shake someone and say, snap out of it. That's not what this is about. You really do have to run the gamut of your feelings. Every part of your process has a beginning, middle, and end. We are only ready to make that next step of looking at the bigger picture once we have gotten to the end of our whole experience with suffering. It isn't about preempting it. You do have to make the journey, and it is not preempting it or putting it on pause or interrupting it. It is learning how to know when you've reached that end, when you've gone through it and you're sitting there and you're like, this is just miserable, or you've cried yourself to the place that you can't cry anymore, or you feel like, if I stay here, I'm going to drown in this. There is an organic end to our grieving process, our suffering process. And it is to know that when you get to that place where you know that you've done it, and doing it anymore is going to be repeating where you've been, just feeling worse and worse about it. It is an organic, instinctive thing that you understand that I'm done with this. Now, let me qualify that. That doesn't always sound like I'm saying it, like, okay, I have come to the end of this level of suffering and I am ready to move on. No, it does not play out like that. Usually it's when, you know how the darkest hour is before the dawn? It usually presents like that. It's usually when it gets batshit crazy and you just think, oh my God. It's more that kind of feeling when you feel like I'm either going to get out of this or this is going to swallow me up alive. It's when it swells up. It isn't when it kind of flattens out and kind of, somehow it looks like it's resolving itself. It is quite the opposite. It almost seems like it's amping up. And that is one thing. Now, this is a secret. It's not a secret. I'm sure people have had this experience and figured this out. But it is a really great piece of information to have. That bit about the darkest hour before the dawn, or in another context, when women are in labor and they're about to give birth, they go through this experience called transition. It is when everything about that labor, everything about having a baby, everything about what the hell have I done with my life, it all peaks right before it's time to give birth. It's this, oh no, I cannot do this, or oh my God, get me out of this, or it's that feeling. And what it signifies is this woman is about to have her baby. She doesn't know that because she's like, she's in it. And having had my own child, I remember transition well. It is that moment when it all seems like it's impossible. It is the darkest hour before the dawn moment. So here's the takeaway from that. When it gets so challenging that you think, I can't do this, know that you're about to do it. Know that you're ready to come through it. That's all it is when the challenge seems unthinkable. When it's like, I can't. The next movement is that you will. You can and you will. It's on the other side of that I can't. So going back to take a different seat in the arena, when I am for myself and also when I am working with people, I can spot that moment of transition. I can spot the time where they're stuck at the wall. This is it. This is end days for me. And I know this is the moment to invite them to make that look, take that next step, move through the impossible. And then it suddenly clears. Because what happens in that moment, to when you take that one step beyond where you think, I can't, but just that one step, just change your seat in the arena. Just shift your perspective. Consider the possibility that this isn't how it is appearing to you. Consider the possibility that this isn't hopeless. Consider the possibility in birth. It's time to push your baby out. It's time to have a resolution. It's time to see it differently. It's time to make your move. You are done with this. And as you make that move, you're literally opening up the darkness so that the light of love can come in. It's just that one pinprick of light. That's all you need, that one pinprick of love. By considering the possibility that this isn't end days for me, that my life isn't over, this situation isn't going to best me, just consider the possibility. It's where you have to go because you have nowhere else in the dark to go. You have hit the wall. It's like there is literally not another step in the dark. And if you allow yourself to know it can't get any worse than this, it means it's time for it to get better. I know this, and we know this because love is always present. God is always present. We have never been abandoned here. We have never been alone. And let me tell you how I know this. Years ago, when I was in some stage of walking through this work, I have been through so many stages, so many levels, so many iterations. I had a question. I was going to say bone to pick, but that's kind of heavy-handed. I needed to talk to God. This was before, it was early days. I've always known in my consciousness that I believed in God. I didn't have a formal relationship with God, but I knew God was there. I was more connected to Christ because of the nature of love, and I felt more comfortable in that relationship, but I always knew God was there. So it seemed to me that we needed to have a conversation. And the conversation, as I proposed to God, was going to be about suffering because I found myself at a place in my life where I needed answers about the nature, this that I'm speaking to you about, of suffering, of human suffering. I said to God, listen, I don't understand. I don't understand human suffering. It breaks my heart that human beings have to suffer so much. I don't understand the purpose. Do not understand the point of it all. Because from where I sit, I don't see the advantage. I don't see where we win in this. I don't see even where we benefit. It just appears to me that it is suffering for suffering's sake. And who's that benefiting? Who's learning from this? Who's growing? Because it was at a point for me that I didn't know what I know now. And all I saw was suffering for suffering's sake. No one could explain to me why. What is the purpose of this? And it costs human beings so much. And it is so heartbreaking. And there are no answers. You know how people say, I said to God, if there were a God, why is he allowing us to suffer? Because it makes no sense to us. We don't have an explanation that we can live with. It doesn't, and no one has any answers. It's just, well, God knows what God's doing. God, he loves you. He looks out for you. He cares for you. And there's this thing, though, this suffering thing, though. What the hell have we done? Tell me that. Tell me what we're suffering from. And do not tell me it's this original sin thing, because it's not carrying us. Okay? It is not making a difference in our suffering to know that it's an original sin that we just, heard about once we got here, and there's no end game to it. There's no way to learn or grow from it that's going to get you out of this suffering loop. It's just the way that it is. Oh my goodness, I said to God, I really need to understand this. And I know there is an answer. I don't care that nobody here or on this planet right now seems to have an answer that makes any sense to me. But I know enough now to know there is an answer for everything. And I know there's an answer for this. So I had that little convo with God. And it's not like God said, well, Melana, let me answer your concerns. No, I stated it and I carried on with my life. But one of the things then I started to recognize as I went through further iterations of this journey through fear, understanding the nature of fear, because then I started saying, okay, wait, what does fear have to do with suffering? What does love have to do with suffering? Since I was dealing with these two opposite energies, I'm sure they both had their own versions of the why. So I feel like God directed me to look at the nature of the energies I had been working with and to deepen my understanding of the nature of these energies. And that if I could do that, I would understand the nature of suffering, which is exactly what did happen. It was when I started to more intimately understand the nature of fear. And it was hard. You see, like the way that fear operates in such a cold, concise devotion to darkness is something that most human beings cannot fathom. You cannot fathom the precision with which the dark plays out in fear's reality. It is something so completely void of any light that it is really hard for us to wrap our heads around. Because in our human journey, no matter how dark it gets, we always get glimpses, pieces of, pins of a glimpse of the light, because love is always there. And love is there to provide that for us, to say, do not give up. I am here. Do not forget, I am here. We live no matter how much in pain, distress, and horror even. The light is always there somewhere. If it's even a shimmer or a flicker of a flame, we have that connection with the light because we are beings of love. We are beings that carry the ability to tap into that light. Fear, on the other hand, no light. Completely void of light, pure darkness. And it is from fear and by fear's design that we experience the kind of suffering that we do and why we do not understand it, because it is something so beyond our understanding of the nature of existence. We always can find the light. We can always find the rainbow. That's what the human spirit is all about. That's why we never give up. That's why we struggle and fight and climb and do whatever we have to do to get to that light. Because we know it's there. We know it's possible. Fear? No. No such thing. Fear is a flat line of darkness with no pulse or heartbeat, with no compassion, nothing of that nature. Okay. The only reason we have survived fear is not because of fear, but because of, and no, let me say that. The only reason we have survived this human journey, and despite what fear brings to the table for us, is our connection to the light and to love. That is why, yes, we experience the pure devastation of suffering. However, we can always transform that suffering because of love and the light we carry within us. That is why we have the ability at the darkest time to make that leap and say, okay, I'll change the seat in the arena because I can't do this anymore. Oh, I've just reached my complete end. There is something in us, it's innate in us, that can allow for a pinprick of possibility that this could be different because we desire it to end, this darkness. We desire this suffering to end. We have not flatlined and become like fear with no hope, no need of hope, no end to the darkness, no end to the madness. We cannot survive that way. We have to. Something in us tugs at us, pushes us. Come on. And if you have someone that says, hey, this is me, you can do this. Just change. I promise you, if you change your seat, it will all look different. I promise you. And I can make that promise because of the hundreds and hundreds and times I've done this myself and with other people. So that's the sidebar. Let's go back to making that change. We're in the arena and you get to say, okay, I'll change my seat. And that's a fun moment, actually, because you can sit in any seat. And even in that moment, the opportunity that you're in, the idea that you're in an arena and your whole life is in the field and all the seats belong to you. It just feels so, ooh, I could do any seat. And if I change my seat, there's something in that moment of this is all for me. This is all about me and my life, and all these seats are about me. It's a moment. And if you allow that moment to kind of infuse you with a little bit of, I can change this because I have all this opportunity. And then that's when it begins to change. That's when the clouds lift. That's when you start making that connection between the suffering and pain and the strength and wisdom. All right? When you start to bring the two together and you say, I see. I can see myself. I can see how this event connects to the bigger picture of my life. I can see how this event has been catalyzed by an experience that I had, something that I was heard about, something that I wasn't clear about, something that I needed to get clear about. You start to say, wow, I can see how this suffering is going to help me clear up a lot of what I was holding on to, or assist me in letting go of what brought this experience of suffering into my life. We are able to see our part in it. And our part isn't anything but, I know why this happened to me. It's no blame, it's no shame, it's no guilt. It's like, oh, I shouldn't. It's just the nature of what happened. Okay. The nature of suffering and the nature of your own relationship to the event, or how the event impacted you. We get to see that. Love shines a light on the situation. You go, wow, okay, so I can let this go. I can get out of this pit of darkness and move to the next step in my life. I can forgive myself, or I can, when it is appropriate, forgive the situation, the event. I can forgive the people only because, if only because, it really wasn't about them anyway. So I don't have the burden of carrying their stories. I can just take responsibility for my own. So to pull this all together, what I experienced in this gang stalking thing, okay, was the most horrific experience I've ever had in my life, bar none. It took me to a place I had never been. I did not think was possible for me. I did not understand. I did not understand how this could be happening to me. It hit all my questions. I had not one answer for why this was in my life. I know how it got in, but what it did to me, even if it was fear, and I have been dealing with fear and this whole journey of walking out and dissolving that relationship and all of that for years, this wasn't something I expected fear to do. Fear took me to the place of that flat line, pure dark. So you know that if it's pure dark, it's pure evil, it's pure everything, it with no light. And that was a place without light that I never thought I would experience in its pure form. I got to see, to feel that. And yeah. So what does that tell us? I got to experience it. It was the most horrific. I thought I was certainly going to die. I thought, because I can't process this. I can't grasp any light. I can't because I don't understand. And it's like any of the light that my guides, my spiritual family in the beginning were trying to infuse me with, I was so locked into the flat line of darkness because I did not understand how this could be happening to me. And if I didn't understand, I didn't see any hope for how this to stop it. So that being the case, and everything I've said about it, the horror, the flat line of pure darkness, pure evil, pure hatred, all of those things which I now understand, I don't believe that human beings can survive that. I don't. I know they can't. I know we can't survive. Cut off from our light, we're dead in the water, you know. But I also somewhere in me discovered that I had some element in me that protected me even from that I didn't know existed until I got there and thought, well, this is the end days for me because I have nothing that I know of that will rescue me from this. I'm cut off from the light and they're making mincemeat out of me and everything that I know, believe in, trust. They're just eating away at my whole being. But there was something in my being that was somehow built in just for this kind of situation. There isn't a horror movie. There isn't anything that I can think of or anything that I've seen that is more horrific to me than what I experienced. But if I could liken it to something, if you're in just sequestered in this dark space and you know doom is just God hours, minutes away, and you hear and you're like in this darkness and you hear this voice and it says, hey, you're not alone. I'm here with you and we're going to get out. And it was like, what? Who in the hell are you? And it's like, well, I'm you. We just haven't met. So I'm the part of you that is supposed to be here just for these times. We're going to get out of here. You've got to trust me, okay? They don't know. Fear doesn't know I'm here. So you have to listen to me and do what I tell you to do. You won't always listen, but that's okay. Because this is going to be hard, but I'm here. And it was that kind of thing for me. I knew I had a card to play that they didn't know I had. And that is really how I am still alive, because that part of me was a part that came to life, that was that part of me from love, that higher place in me. And I was ready, because even though it was really horrendous and all those things, I was pissed. I was pissed. More than anything, I was pissed that this was happening to me. I was like, oh my God, no. So I had an attitude, which is so my story. And so it was perfect for me. It's like, well, hell yeah, let's do this. Because it allowed for me to find that place in me that wanted to fight back. That I don't care who this is or what this is. It woke that part of me up again. And now, no, this is not going to go down like this. So I knew that, okay, I'm going to fight my way out of this. And I did, in various iterations, sometimes clawing and screaming and kicking, and sometimes using my big brain and strategizing. There was always a mixture of both. Sometimes I'd scream and yell and shove and push, and then sometimes I'd sit coolly and get very strategic about what my moves were. So in saying that, I want to say this. Use your whole self. Do not stand on ceremony when you are facing dark or challenges. Use your whole self. Do not let anyone tell you that you have to be, because you're spiritual, that you have to be a certain way. You've got to behave well. You can't let them see you being emotional. You can't look. Sometimes you have to fight your way past a barrier. And all the nice curtsying and being the Gentile person because you're a spiritual person and we don't act like that is bullshit. Sometimes the warrior has to come out. Sometimes the just to fight for survival with every kick and scream. Use it. Use what you have. Do not be shy. You wouldn't have it if you weren't able to use it. And it is as valuable as the strategy and the logic. You have to use it all. Again, not the duality, not the fragmentation, not saying, well, that's fear's toolkits and this is love. You know what? When you're dealing with fear like that, when you're dealing with fear that is just daring you to break cover and knowing, because we're taught, well, if I'm really the spiritual being that I say I am, then I have to hold to some kind of form. And that was something was the challenge with the beings who were coming for me. There were two ways. First, she's not going to go there. And then second, though, it was, yeah, let's push her to go there. Let's make her look really crazy. But you see, here's the thing. I knew that I wasn't crazy. And I knew I could push back in a way that the threat of crazy could not stop me, which is what they were banking on. Or that if I did push back that way, in that really guttural, emotional way, I would just lose my shit. I would just lose control. And that's what they were banking on. They were not banking on me being able to use that as my advantage and stay completely in control, because I knew what I was doing. If you give yourself permission to use the tools that you have, then you are in control of those tools. No one can push you into some place you don't want to operate from. If you allow yourself access to all places within you. Situations sometimes require that. Okay? Just remember that in terms of the times that we're in. And sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And don't let the people come and tell you, oh, that was a bit over the top. Well, the fucking situation was over the top, wasn't it? Be willing to not only be all of yourself, but also know your spiritual family, God is Christ, everyone approves. You know, it's like when people talk about the archangels, what I discovered for myself and then realized that other people knew as well. Some of the archangels, just like some of the ancestors, are not prim and proper. Archangel Michael is known for being like the badass of the crew. Michael will do anything he has to protect and serve the human race because he works on behalf of God. And you get to see Father is also not prim and proper when he, needs to do otherwise. So if you ever feel like, oh my God, I'm stepping out of form, no, you're not, because your Father created that form for you. It's knowing how to be in charge of it. Okay. All right. I feel like hopefully I've come full circle. We have to, by nature of our human journey, experience the suffering, but we can get through it. We can own it, and we can marry it to wisdom and strength, and then grow and evolve from it. That is the gift of living in love. That is the gift of embracing love as your operating energy. You will always land in that place of opportunity, no matter what. Life, fear, other people serve up. You will always land in the land of opportunity when you choose love as your operating system. All right. I feel like I landed where I needed to with this. And I wanted to talk about it to bridge the original session about the gang stalking and all of that, to give more context or background information to my experience of it. And I am getting stronger every day and doing well. And yes, thank you so much for listening. I have more to say. I always have more to say. I'm a Gemini. What can I say? I will be back again with another session. Take care, and I love you. Please subscribe. Please like this video if you got anything of value out of it. Okay? I would love that. And that would help my channel, and it would support what I am, the work that I am doing here. I love you. I will talk to you soon.